Hello guys, welcome back. I hope you have been enjoying the sessions so far. So in our last video, we discussed about project scope management. We learned what is project scope management, and the first step of the project scope management was develop a plan. So in this video, we are going to learn about plan scope management. So let us talk about plan scope management. So plan scope management is the process of creating a scope management plan, of course, that documents how the project scope will be defined, validated, and controlled, right? So the key benefit of this process is that it provides you the guidance and direction on how the scope will be managed throughout the project, okay? So planning a scope management guides you on how to define a scope and how the defined scope will be managed and controlled throughout the project, right? So the most important benefit of planning your scope is it prevents the scope creep. Okay, so what is scope creep? So scope creep, it basically refers to the continuous changes in your project scope. Okay, at any point after the project begins. Okay, so what is the main reason that a scope creep occurs? It occurs because when the scope of the project is not properly defined or documented or even controlled, right? So if you plan your scope management properly, then you can prevent scope creep. And in addition to it, as per the PMI guidelines, guys, gold plating is not at all allowed in the project management. What is gold plating? Whenever a project manager intentionally adds features in the product scope which are not there in the project scope statement, that is what you call gold plating. So that is not at all allowed. Okay. Okay, so now let's talk about the ITTOs of the plan scope management. You see, guys, first of all, I would like to clarify you all that please don't learn the ITTOs. Okay, you can never answer the questions in the PMP exam if you learn the ITTOs. The most important thing is you need to understand the ITTOs. Okay, so try to understand all the inputs that are required for any knowledge area, all the tools and techniques that we use, and of course all the outputs. Okay, try to understand them, try to understand the situations in which the questions are asked. Okay, anyway, let's move ahead. Let's first of all discuss about the inputs that are there for the plan scope management. The first input is project management plan. Okay, so the project management plan, in you can say that, see, the project management plan, any subsidiary plans of the project management plan, are can be used to create the scope management plan. Okay, so it basically influences the approach that you take for planning the scope and managing the project scope. Okay, so in the project management plan, what attributes of the project management plan can influence the scope management plan? They can be, first of all, project life cycle description. It basically determines the number of phases the project will include, right from the start till the end. Secondly, it can be your development approach. Okay, so it basically determines which approach will be used throughout the project. For example, it can be the waterfall or iterative, adaptive, agile, or even a hybrid approach, right? Or the quality management plan can also not can it is the input to the scope management plan, because uh, quality is uh, is what we finally require at the end of the project, right? So if you have not achieved the quality of the product or the service as defined in the project scope statement, it means you have not achieved your project deliverables, right? So quality management plan is also the input to the scope management plan, right? Next is project charter. Of course, as we know that project charter, it provides you the high level project description. So whenever you start to plan your scope, obviously you should be well aware of what were the high level requirements and what was the high level project description during the project charter. Okay, so the project charter is used to provide the project context basically, which is needed to plan the scope management processes, right? It provides you the high level project description and product characteristics from the project statement of work, right? uh, Enterprise environmental factors. So the environmental factors that can influence the plan scope management can be, you can say, your organization's culture, okay, the existing infrastructure that you have, uh, it can be your personal administrations, or even it can be your marketplace conditions, right? So these are some few of the examples of the environmental factors that can influence your plan scope management, right? OPAs, organizational process assets. So the OPAs that can influence your plan scope management can be, the existing policies and procedures that you need to follow, right? And also, very importantly, is the historical information and lessons learned knowledge base, right? So it can, of course, influence your planning of scope management, right? Now let us talk about the tools and techniques that are used in the plan scope management. The first is meetings, right? Meetings are of course very important. Project team members, they attend the project meetings to develop the scope management plan, and the attendees at these meetings, it includes the project manager, the project sponsor, the selected and important stakeholders, the selected project team members, and anyone with or anyone who is having a responsibility of the scope management processes, right? So meetings are of course very important when you are going to decide on how you are going to manage and control your scope, right? Second is expert judgment. So when you are planning as important something as scope, of course you need to take help of the experts. So expert judgment, it refers to the basically the inputs that you receive from the knowledgeable and experienced persons who have who usually have an experience in the large projects that they might have done in their career, right? So expertise may be provided by any group or a person with specialized education or knowledge or skill or experience, right, in developing a scope management plan, right? The third is data analysis. The data analysis that is used in the scope management plan is alternative analysis. So, project manager should always have some alternatives, right? It is always good to have some alternatives whenever you are deciding on something, right? So there should always be more than one way to achieve a certain requirement, okay? So this is how alternative analysis helps a project manager to reach to an agreement between various stakeholders, right? Also, it is in this way helps the project manager to select the best option, okay? So after a lot of brainstorming that the project manager does after meeting with a lot of stakeholders and project team members, so alternative analysis helps the project manager to select the best option. Okay, let us have a look at the outputs. Uh, Plan scope management has two outputs. One is scope management plan and the other one is requirements management plan. Let us discuss about each of them separately. Okay, so the scope management plan. The scope management plan, it essentially describes how the scope will be defined, developed, monitored, controlled, and verified, right? So what does the scope management plan include? It includes, first of all, how to achieve the scope, right? The scope that you have defined, the scope that you have defined and developed, the scope management plan includes how to achieve that scope, right? Second is what tools you will use for the project to accomplish the scope, how to create and maintain WBS, work breakdown structure, what environmental factors and organizational process assets come into picture, how scope will be managed and controlled to the project management plan, right? How to obtain acceptance of deliverables, okay? What criteria, what parameters are you going to set for the acceptance of your project deliverables? You see, the scope management plan, it can be developed in stages or iterated during the project planning, okay? So the scope management plan, it can be developed in stages. You see, as a very first step of the planning, you determine your scope. Okay. Now, in parallel, when you are planning the rest of the project, when you are planning the rest of the things like cost management or time or quality or risk, okay, the decisions of the planning of these other knowledge areas will be incorporated in the scope management plan. Okay. So any decision that you take while planning your other knowledge areas, it may impact uh, on the way how you are going to manage your scope. So all those decisions which can impact the management of scope are to be incorporated in the scope management plan. Also, the scope management plan is a major input in the development of project management plan process, right? And the other scope management processes. Okay, it's vice versa. It's vice versa. When the other project management plans can influence the development of scope management plan, the scope management plan also influences the other project management plans. Okay, so what is requirements management plan? You see, once you have the list of requirements with you, so the requirements management plan, it essentially describes how these requirements will be analyzed, documented, and managed, right? So the management plan, it includes how the requirements activities will be planned, tracked, and reported. Configuration management activities, how to track changes to the requirements, how changes to the product will be initiated, how impacts will be analyzed, how they will be traced, tracked, and reported, as well as the authorization levels required to approve these changes, right? So it also includes the configuration management activities, which basically tracks the changes to the requirements that we have documented. It also prioritize the requirements. It also describes that how the requirements will be prioritized. Okay. It also tells you what to include in the requirements traceability matrix. Requirements traceability matrix we will discuss in detail in our next video. Okay. Let's answer a simple question. The product scope is best defined as which of the following? The features and functions that characterize a product, service, or result. Okay, it can be a correct answer. The work performed to deliver a product, service, or result. No, it is a project scope. So this is not a correct answer. The scope baseline. No. The plan to manage the changes to a product. No. Okay. So the correct answer is the features and functions that characterize a product, service, or result. Okay, thank you guys. I hope you enjoyed the session. Please do leave your comments in the comment section below, and please do subscribe to my channel if you're liking my content. In our next video, we'll continue with the project scope management, and we will learn about the process of collect requirements. Thank you. Take care. Bye-bye.